I came across this Reddit thread by user Next28 that compiled some massive updates about episode 7 of The Amazing Digital Circus, and honestly, when you hear what both Gooseworx and Michael Kovach have been saying about this upcoming episode, it's gonna completely change how you think about where this show is heading. So basically we got direct information from two separate streams where both the creator and one of the main voice actors are literally warning fans that episode 7 is going to piss people off and potentially tear the fanbase apart. And I'm not talking about random speculation here, because these are direct quotes from official sources that paint a pretty clear picture of just how controversial this episode is going to be. But let me break down exactly what they said, because this is huge. So first, during Jobby's stream, who voices the disappearing guy character, Gooseworx explained that episode 7 went through production hell during pre-production. She explained that there were tons of rewrites because they knew they had to get it right, otherwise it would be the worst thing ever. But even after all that work, she said it's still only going to piss off the right people.
There were like so many rewrites because it's like we have to get this to work, otherwise it will be like the worst thing ever. I feel like we got it working though, so it's only gonna piss off the right people.
Now the phrase "the right people" is really interesting because it suggests that whoever gets mad about this episode are people that Gooseworx thinks deserve to be upset. So we're not talking about disappointing fans accidentally. This sounds intentional. But then Michael Kovach, who voices Jax, he was on this other stream and basically confirmed everything Gooseworx said, plus gave us even more details. He said that episode 7 will probably tear the fanbase apart because some people will love the direction it's going, while others will feel completely betrayed by how it goes.
Goose actually was in a stream with the guy that voices disappearing guy, Jobby. She explained that episode 7, the next episode, will piss off people. And I will be honest, it probably will. I think that'll be the episode that somewhat tears the fan base a little bit, because some people will see that episode and love the direction it's going. Some people will feel like betrayed by the way it goes.
And here's where it gets really specific, because Michael mentioned that he told a friend about what happens in episode 7, and their reaction was literally, and I'm quoting, "Dude, that's I hate it." But Michael said he had the complete opposite reaction and he loved it. So whatever is happening in this episode is so divisive that even people close to the production are split on whether it's good or bad. Now, looking at all the fan reactions in the comments, most people are immediately jumping to conclusions about Jax, and honestly that makes sense given everything we know. The most popular theory is that this episode will either set up Jax's redemption or definitely prove that he can be redeemed, and given that Gooseworx once said that only the strongest Jax fans will survive, it's looking more and more like the second option. However, what they are describing probably goes beyond just one character's actions. Michael specifically said it's about the direction of the whole show and that some people will feel betrayed by the way it goes. And that suggests we're talking about a fundamental shift in what fans expect from the Amazing Digital Circus. But one theory that keeps coming up is that episode 7 might abandon the adventure format entirely. And like episode 6 was barely an adventure, and if Kane starts giving up on trying to create these elaborate scenarios, that could definitely piss off fans who are there for the more colorful, game-like atmosphere. But another major theory is that we're going to get some kind of lore revelation that completely changes how we understand the circus. And some fans think it might be what they're calling a Soma situation, which I'm assuming is named after the horror game where the main character discovers he's not actually human, but a digital copy of someone's consciousness. The theory is that the circus members might find out that they are not the original people who got trapped, but copies of those people's minds, while the real versions either died or moved on in the real world. And this would be psychologically devastating, because it means that their memories are real to them, but they're not actually the people who lived those experiences. Plus, there would be no way to escape back to their original lives, because those lives belong to different versions of themselves. And I mean, that would definitely divide the fan base, because some would see it as making their struggles meaningless, while others would probably argue that the copies are still real people with valid experiences, regardless of being digital. But the theory that's really gaining traction, especially given what we know about Jax's backstory, is that episode 7 might finally reveal the truth about what happened with Kaufmo and Ribbit. We know from previous episodes that Jax used to have friends in the circus, but he doesn't anymore, and there's clearly some major trauma tied to their abstractions. And what's interesting is that Jax mentioned both Kaufmo and Ribbit became insufferable right before they abstracted. But what if that wasn't just them getting worse? What if episode 7 reveals that Jax's relationship with them was way more complicated than we thought? Maybe we'll find out that Jax wasn't just a bystander to their mental decline, but that he was actually trying to help them in his own messed up way, and it backfired catastrophically. Because we've seen how Jax reacts when people try to get close to him. He pushes them away because he genuinely believes he's dangerous to be around. And what if that belief comes from experience? What if he tried to be there for Kaufmo and Ribbit, but his methods of helping or his inability to handle their deteriorating mental states actually made things worse? This could explain why Jax is so convinced that forming connections is pointless and harmful. If episode 7 shows us that his former friendships ended in tragedy partly because of his actions, and not out of malice, but out of his own inability to cope with other people's pain, that would definitely split the fanbase, because some people would see it as proof that he's irredeemable, while others might finally understand why he's built these walls around himself. But the concerning part is how much preparation went into this episode. Gooseworx said they did multiple rewrites, specifically because they knew getting it wrong would be catastrophic, but they still expected to make people angry. And that suggests that they're committed to this direction, even knowing that it will probably upset fans. And what makes this even more intense is that episode 7 was originally supposed to be combined with episode 8 as one massive episode, but Gooseworx had to split it into 2 parts because of how long it was getting. But according to her, all the upcoming episodes are still over 30 minutes long, even after the split. And that means that whatever content they are dealing with is so dense and emotionally heavy that it literally couldn't be compressed without losing its impact. So we are most likely not just talking about a single controversial moment, but an extended storyline that requires that much time to properly develop. If they are spending over an hour of runtime exploring whatever happens with Jax, Kaufmo and Ribbit or whoever else, that suggests we're getting a deep dive into some really dark psychological territory. And honestly, the timing makes sense, because we're getting into the final 3 episodes of the series, so this is when Gooseworx needs to start making her actual thematic statements instead of just setting up character dynamics. And if her message is that some people are too damaged to be saved, or that trauma can make someone genuinely dangerous to others, then episode 7 might be where she stops pulling punches and shows us exactly what that looks like. But what's kind of weird is how the voice actors are talking about this. Like, Michael wasn't trying to hype the next episode up or get people excited, but he was literally warning fans that they might not like what they see. And that's not typical marketing behavior, which suggests they genuinely care about preparing people for something that could be emotionally difficult. But here's the thing, if Gooseworx is specifically saying that this will piss off the right people, then maybe she's targeting fans who have been misunderstanding what this show is actually about. Maybe it's aimed at people who think Jax is just a misunderstood bad boy, or people who expect every character to get a happy ending, or people who want the show to stay light and comedic forever. We know that this has been a struggle of hers from the beginning to actually target the right people with the series. But yeah, the Amazing Digital Circus has always been about mental health and trauma, but it's also been relatively hopeful about the possibility of healing and connection. So if episode 7 is where Gooseworx decides to show the darker side of that equation, then yeah, that's definitely going to upset fans who were expecting a more traditionally uplifting resolution. And honestly, given everything we've seen building up to this point, I think we're about to see Jax finally prove that all his warnings about himself were true. He's been telling everyone that he's dangerous, that he doesn't care about anyone, and that people shouldn't try to get close to him. And episode 6 showed us that he genuinely wants to believe this about himself, and episode 7 might be where he finally demonstrates why. But the fact that both Gooseworx and Michael Kovach are essentially issuing content warnings for their own show tells you everything you need to know about how intense this is going to be. Like, they're not even trying to surprise people anymore, but they are trying to prepare them for something that they know will be controversial and potentially upsetting. So basically, if you've been watching The Amazing Digital Circus expecting it to be a straightforward story about found family and healing, episode 7 might be where you realize you've been watching a much darker and more complex show than you thought. And if you're a Jax fan who's been hoping for his redemption arc, well, you might want to prepare yourself for the possibility that Gooseworx has something very different planned. But let me know what you think about all these warnings and whether you're prepared for episode 7 or not. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.